The term UFO metamaterials refers to physical materials claims to have been obtained from unidentified flying objects, UFOs, or unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. These materials are often central to speculation and theories about the technology that might be behind these mysterious objects, especially within the community of UFO enthusiasts and researchers. Metamaterials in a scientific context are engineered materials designed to have properties not found in naturally occurring materials. They are crafted to have a specific structure, sometimes at nanoscale, which can manipulate electromagnetic waves in unusual ways, such as bending light to render objects invisible or greatly improving antenna capabilities. The idea that metamaterials originate from UFOs is based on a few contentions. Number 1. Advanced properties. These materials contain extraordinary physical or chemical characteristics that cannot be produced with the contemporary technology on Earth. Number 2. Isotopic ratios. Analysis of these materials sometimes include claims of isotopic ratios that are not typical of those found on Earth, leaving only extraterrestrial origin. Number 3. Unusual structures. These materials usually display structural features at very small scales that suggest a manufacturing technique or an understanding of physics beyond current human capabilities. I ask that you watch this video with open minds.
And Chris Matthews. This is 8 News Now at 11.
A global scramble is underway to identify and perhaps replicate unidentified mystery material that's been collected in multiple sites around the world.
A few of the samples have defied analysis by leading scientists who say they don't know how the material was engineered or why or by whom.
Now, some of this meta material was allegedly collected in connection with UFO incidents, which gives the whole endeavor another worldly glow. The I-Team's George Knapp has the story and the Las Vegas connection.
The whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
For years, the Pentagon secretly studied the seemingly impossible abilities of unknown craft captured in these military videos. Scientists now want to know if the materials used in these mystery aircraft allow them to do what they do. For years, one of the secret studies was carried out by BASS, a Las Vegas operation hidden within Bigelow Aerospace. Documents first reported by the I-Team show that BASS landed a contract with the DIA, and one of the objectives was to study so-called metamaterials, as well as futuristic technologies.
It was a multi-layered bismuth and magnesium sample. Bismuth layers less than a human hair. Magnesium samples about 10 times the size of a human hair. Supposedly picked up in the crash retrieval of an advanced aerospace vehicle. Looks like it's been in a crash.
In Las Vegas back in June, physicist Hal Puthoff came pretty close to saying that this weird wedge of metamaterial came from a crashed saucer, but he can't know for sure. Puthoff and his colleague Dr. Eric Davis are on the cutting edge of attempts to identify an assortment of bits and pieces that are seemingly beyond anything we can create. This one sample is engineered in layers thinner than microns.
A micron, also known as a micrometer, is a unit of length in the metric system. It is equal to 1/1,000,000th of a meter, which makes it a very small unit of measurement. In terms of thickness, a micron is incredibly thin. To give you an idea of scale, a human hair is typically about 50 to 100 microns in diameter, so a micron is much smaller than the width of a human hair. It is often used to measure very fine particles, such as dust, or the size of microorganisms, and is also used in various scientific and industrial applications to describe extremely small distances or thicknesses.
Through a process unknown on Earth, and for a purpose we can only guess.
Nowhere could we find any evidence that anybody ever made one of these. When we talked to people who, in the materials field, who should know, they said, we don't know why anybody would want to make anything like this.
Astrophysicist Dr. Jacques Vallée has been analyzing mystery metals since the 80s, often using the technical expertise of Stanford University and Silicon Valley to unravel unknown samples acquired from all over the world. Vallée pointedly steers clear of any military funding, and he shared his findings at public conferences.
We have multiple samples now from multiple sources, ranging a wide variety of integrity.
These days, former intelligence officer Lou Elizondo helps to collect and protect unknown chunks for the To the Stars Academy. Before that, he ran ATIP, the Pentagon's secret UFO study, the same one which released the now famous videos. This summer, To the Stars launched Adam, its own effort to find and study pieces of material that may have been stashed away for decades after being retrieved from the sites of close encounters. Elizondo says there are legitimate reasons why the military and now private groups are in a race to figure out these materials.
What our internal efforts are to potentially, I'm not saying we're doing this, maybe replicate that technology or to reverse engineer that technology, right? Now you're getting into some sensitivities that you don't necessarily want everybody to be privy to.
George Knapp, 8 News Now.
By the way, when the New York Times broke its story last year about the Pentagon's UFO study, it reported that a sample of mystery material was secretly stored at Bigelow Aerospace. Managers of that program told the I-Team that while they're familiar with some of the metamaterial samples, none were ever stashed here in Las Vegas.
Born March 20th, 1935, Roger Crevin Lear was an American pediatric surgeon and UFOologist, best known as an investigator of alleged alien implants. Lear wrote books such as The Aliens and the Scalpel, and appeared on various radio and television shows, including Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM, claiming he had discovered proof of non-terrestrial experimentation on man. Lear spoke at the 2009 UFO Congress about some of his prominent cases, reflecting on evidence which included both videos and pictures.
If you wouldn't mind, before I begin, could you tell us what DPM stands for?
Doctor of Podiatric Medicine.
Okay, thank you. Thank
you. I want to thank the chair of the committee, Mr. Cook, honorable members of the committee, congressional members, my fellow colleagues that are here, and guests for allowing me to present this material to you today, and a multitude of thanks to Steve Bassett for setting this up and again allowing me this opportunity. I know we have certain time constraints, so we will do my very best to stay within those time constraints. I've already submitted a written document which I will read to the committee, and I've also submitted to you some paperwork which is of a scientific nature of our findings. But I have not stated anything of my own personal background, so I'd like to take a very short period of time to do that. I have a degree as a Bachelor of Science, Doctor of Podiatric Medicine. I did research with Dow Corning for bone replacement implants. I've participated in research in tendon regeneration. I have a good knowledge of the biological workings of the human body. I was also, for 3 years, the chairman of a committee at the Cedars of Lebanon Hospital in Hollywood, California, head of the diabetic clinic, and director of residency training program at a hospital in Simi Valley, California. If anyone had told me at that time that I would be involved in anything in the UFO field or traveled to 42 countries and participated in the things that I have participated in relative to UFOs, I would have said they're nuts. Strange things have happened in my life that were very synchronistic. One of these was my cousin's occupation as a PhD psychology professor at the University of Connecticut, who wrote a series of books on the near-death experience. One of the books he wrote was called the Omega Project, and it was funded by the University of Connecticut. But the interesting thing was that the story that he was trying to portray, or the research project itself, was to look for a common psychological profile between those who had UFO experiences and those that had near-death experiences. The end result was there wasn't any. It was a entirely different subject. At that time, I was just getting into the field, and he asked me if I would like to have his research material because he no longer was going to be doing anything with UFOs. I accepted and expected to get a little package. I got boxes and boxes and boxes of material, research work, and books from some of the best-known authors in the field of ufology. Now, it's a two-way street. I came here not only to present information, but also to learn information. For example, I was very interested to learn that the Eisenhower speech not only talked about the military-industrial complex, but the military-industrial congressional complex. I thought that was very informative. I also thought it was very informative to learn that the oaths that were taken by military officers and other officers in government was to the Constitution of the United States and not to any particular committee or policy. So I am here also as a student to learn from you. What I've planned today and ask you that favor, again with time constraints, is that at the end of my presentation, I'm allowed to ask you just 2 questions, which may be answered by any one of you that would like to take the challenge of answering it.
We'll be willing to suspend to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Now, I'd like to read the written presentation that I prepared and submitted to the committee. I, with my surgical team of medical specialists, performed 16 surgeries for the removal of foreign objects from those individuals who allege alien abduction. The 16 cases involved the removal of 17 separate and distinct objects. One of these objects turned out to be a small run of ceramic-like glass, which was manufactured by Dow Corning Industries. In almost my 50 years of podiatric surgical practice, I have removed literally hundreds or numerous objects from the human foot, including paper, glass, metal, stones, hair, coral, many other objects, including secret metal. At one time, a patient came in with 2 gentlemen in suits and the proper identification. He worked as a machinist for an aerospace company. I removed the object and they said, please. And so I handed them the material that I removed from the individual's foot. Later come to find out that it was a new material that was experimental for the use of rocket valves in rocketry. The individuals involved in the study all presented with no noted portal of entry for any of the objects that were removed. There was no visible scar formation, and there was no interruption of the integrity of the skin, even when examination was performed with a magnifying loupe, not only examining the area involved, but a large amount of the peripheral area. All the individuals in the study presented with positive X-rays or CT scans showing metallic or lesser dense foreign objects. Prior to the surgical procedures performed, the areas of interest were examined by the use of a Gauss meter for magnetic or electromagnetic emissions. 10 of them were found to be producing readings on a Gauss meter of 6 to 10 milligauss. That is a large amount for a very small object that varies in size from approximately 6 to 10 millimeters in length and about the diameter of a pencil lead. Now, I understand that from the crew here and some of the television people I've worked with, that a modern television camera produces about 4.3 milligauss of emissions. So here's a very small object producing 10 milligauss of emissions. Now, in addition to these type of examinations, we used frequencies of ultraviolet light to detect fluorescence in the area of the object. About 60% presented with positive UV light fluorescence with color ranges from pink, green to yellow. One of the last surgical patients displayed a large chevron-appearing area like an insignia on the outside of the right arm near the shoulder. He had no prior knowledge of it being there. We have also found that the removal of this fluorescent material with ordinary solvents only makes them disappear for intervals of approximately 1 hour. But when re-examined again, they appear again with the use of ultraviolet light with varying frequencies. In addition, by use of radio wave frequency detector, we were able to detect that certain radio frequencies in the FM band, both in the megahertz and kilohertz range, were being emitted from the object. It was determined that in one case, the frequencies detected, and this is through a chart that I was able to obtain through sources that I will not be able to mention, but these frequencies were noted fixed or mobile deep space frequencies. Unfortunately, our limited budget for performing this research has not allowed us to obtain a radio frequency analyzer so that a radio wave could be captured and analyzed. All surgeries
Doctor,
were
you have
performed.
about 1 minute. I just wanted to make you aware of that, so you got about 1 minute.
Yes, sir. All the surgeries we performed were documented with eyewitnesses, video, and still photography. We established a chain of criteria and protocols for a forensic chain of custody. All the objects were placed in sterile containers using the patient's own blood serum. These containers are then signed and not opened again until they reach the laboratories. I will skip some of the material because of time constraints. We find that in all pathological reports, there is no inflammatory reaction. There is no rejection reaction. There is no, in exhaustive research of human science, there is nothing that we have found in material science that will produce absolutely no inflammatory reaction in the human body. These objects all do. Also, in addition, they are surrounded by a large amount of specialized nerve endings called proprioceptors, and these are areas which are not consistent with Gray's anatomy. The pathology reports and examination we have sent to material science laboratories. Some of these include Los Alamos National Laboratories, New Mexico Tech, University of California at San Diego, Southwest Laboratories in San Antonio, Texas, as well as numerous other laboratories outside the country. ANS research scientists and our science board has enabled us to do some of our own scientific studies. I've already described some of the length and size of the object, so we'll skip
Doctor, I
over
absolutely
that.
hate to do this, but your time has expired. And what we're going to do, though, is suspend and allow you your request. And I would ask the members of the panel to keep their answers, not questions, their answers here, as short as possible so that we can at least get 5 minutes for our questioning of this technology panel that how often do you get to hear from 4 PhD physicists, scientists, everything else? So I want to have plenty of time for our questions, but go ahead.
You want me to be finished?
No, I want you to ask the question. You asked me to change the rules in order to ask.
What I'd like to ask you, number one, is do you, in your present positions, being retired Congress people, Senator, do you consider the United States to be a world superpower? Anybody that wishes to answer that?
In terms of military capability and force, yes. In terms of intellectual capacity and moral guidance, no.
Congressman Kirkpatrick, would you like to add anything?
I concur with the senator, exactly.
Thank you. Now, this will be very short. Let's assume that what we learned from them up there, let's just assume hypothetically that this is a reality, what kind of a position would you think that the United States would be on a world scale if a third world country, a renegade country, would release the entire amount of information to the public of the world?
It couldn't do anything. In fact, that's one of the things we hope, that if the issue is brought before the General Assembly and is voted to hold a global conference, then that conference will be its own guide, regardless of the United States of America or Britain or any other country, because it will be beyond their control. And that's one of the reasons why I personally would like this issue to go before the General Assembly and not go before the Congress, which I think would just continue the cover-up that we've experienced from the government for the last 50 years.
I would say that there's probably not a person in this room that would not agree with you.
Oh, no, there's, I think there's
And that is not totally true, what you just said. But I do believe that it would make a huge, huge difference. I actually think it would make the people of the world, certainly the people of the United States, even better. I think if we had absolute knowledge of these things, peace would be more likely. A unified approach towards really finding out answers of other things to eliminate suffering and disease and everything else would be vastly enhanced. I think there's a lot of wonderful good. I don't necessarily think the United States would slip into second place on anything. I have a little bit of difference with my esteemed colleague from Alaska on that. But let's get to the questioning. Mr. Timekeeper.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker really does not need an introduction to this audience. Dr. Roger Leir has been solely, I would say almost solely, responsible for the modern implant research. Okay? Yes, abductees do get implants. Yes, Dr. Leir has removed a lot of them. And it's getting serious, guys. He is getting some absolutely extraordinary findings, and he is here to update us on them now. Dr. Roger Leir.
They gave me a stool. Well, it's a pleasure to be back here again to discuss this very fascinating subject with you. Has everybody had lunch? Oh, okay, well, those of you that haven't, I feel for you because I haven't either. But anyway, we have a lot of material to cover in just a very short time. I'd like to make one special announcement. There is a trip that's going to occur. These brochures are in various places at the registration table and at my table in the vendor room. It's a wonderful trip to Egypt, and the date is May the 5th through the 17th. George Norrie from Coast to Coast AM, where he possibly will be there broadcasting live. So if you can make it and you want more information, there's only 25 people that are going to be allowed to go. So please find out more about it. I'd like to thank Bob Brown and the UFO Congress for giving me the opportunity to do this presentation today. I'm going to present some new material that you have not heard about before. And this is based on the 15th surgery that we've done for removal of alien implants. We'll simply call this case file SC0010908. And if I can work this machine, we'll go on. Now, the patient has been using a pseudonym. His name is John Smith. He's 47 years old, and he is married with 3 children. He resides in Southern California, and his occupation just happens to be a physical scientist. So very strange things involved in this case. He has a positive alien abduction history, and as you know, ANS research has a very strict set of protocols and criteria that we use before any surgery is performed. And John fulfilled all the criteria and protocols and became the 15th case. The area of concern here is the second toe of the left foot. We had x-rays taken, and they showed a metallic foreign body measuring about 4 millimeters in length and about the thickness of a pencil lead. And as you know, in the other cases, we've seen about the same thing. So we have a number of these, at least 8 or 9, which all look the same and have the same essential qualities. What's unusual, another thing that's unusual about this case is when we did the scientific study of what we have here, we find it's sort of an embodiment of all the other 14 cases. If you've been following my research as it's been going, if you go way, way back to the first and second cases, and we had laboratory data coming from Los Alamos National Laboratories and from New Mexico Tech. If you remember, they didn't know what these samples were. This was a blind study, and they came back with a conclusion that these are a meteorite-like samples. And as you know, people don't step on meteorites or whack them with their hand, otherwise they'd have a very big hole, and probably not much material would be embedded in it. Once the x-rays are taken, then we know that there's an object there. We use a CAT scan, and the CAT scan will give us the approximation of where the object lies, and we're able to then do the surgery more specifically. I told you it was about 3 to 5 millimeters. It's radio dense. That means that it appears in an x-ray about the thickness of a pencil lead. Second toe again. Estimated date of insertion was February the 28th of 2008. And how do we know that? Well, the individual remembers waking up in the morning, and he saw a couple of drops of blood on the bed sheets, and he looked down at the toe, and there was a couple of small puncture wounds which healed within a very short time. As with the other cases, again, there was no scar and no portal of entry available. Also, if you recall, before we take anything out, we like to find out as much information as possible as to what's going on. And as we're able to do that and get better and better equipment, we're able to get much more knowledge. And as you recall, one of the cases we did was emanating a radio frequency, which was verified by a friend of mine in Las Vegas, let's put it that way, who sent me a classified FCC sheet, and we found out that that frequency was broadcasting on a deep space radio frequency. Now, if that don't knock your socks off, I don't know what does. We have emissions coming from this last case too. We use a Gauss meter to detect the electromagnetic activity, and we found that we had a magnetic field of greater than 10 milligauss. Ionizing radiation, we were only able to detect the normal background radiation using a Geiger counter. And the radio emissions, again, we're at 14.749650 megahertz. I don't know yet. I haven't had enough time to find out exactly where on the band or where that is going, but we're finding out. We had emissions of RF and ELF and in the microwave bands. You may have been told, but we're offering everyone that comes to the conference, and it's at least within the sound of my voice, if anybody's here or not in the room but are at the conference and you talk to them and you feel maybe they might have an implant of something and of whatever, and they would like to know more about it, we have a very expensive $90,000 piece of equipment sitting right outside the door here with Open Minds. Open Minds also is a new entity that's coming about, and it's going to serve as a purpose of a clearinghouse for physical evidence and other things in the UFO field. It's going to be a marvelous organization, and it's headed by one John Rayo. So you'll meet him out there. Anybody that wants to be scanned, you don't have to undress. You can just come as you are and stand in front of the antenna, and we'll tell you what time is on your radio control watch. So that'll be right after my presentation, right outside the door in the back of the room.